G'day and welcome to another Facebook Live here on the Max My Profit page. Welcome. I'm really looking forward to having a chat today with Scott Gilardi, and we're going to talk a bit about, well, in fact, the topic measure is if you can't measure, you can't manage. And I'm a big fan of that saying, which is you can't manage what you don't measure. I'm pretty sure it's the saying I've heard. The 5 key metrics your business needs to monitor if you want to scale. Now, I don't know too many business owners that don't want to scale, so hopefully you are one of those business owners that wants to scale, because you are in for a real treat today. Now, I'll just remind you that today is a live Facebook broadcast. So if you, at any point in time you do have any questions, I'm going to bring the live up on my phone right now, which is right here. And I'm going to monitor the question box. So I can, let me see if I can get that working. I said I'm going to do that, but now my phone's playing up. But I'm going to monitor the question box down here, or the comments box below the live video. So if you do have any questions, there we go, we've got up and running. Let me know if you've got any questions. The other thing you can do, if you tap on the little... there's myself again back. You can hit the little thumbs up button or the love heart button if you really love it. I've just done that so you can see how much fun that is to have those things flying across the screen. You can get involved in that as well. And of course, hit the share button as well. So if you think you've got somebody in your Facebook feed that would love to learn more about scaling their business, then today is the day to be hitting that share button. So Scott Gilardi is founder of Scale My Empire. He's changing the way that professional services and executive teams think about sustainable growth and scalability. His mission is to help double the rate of small businesses that successfully transition into the mid-market by leveraging the great multiplier, which is systems and technology platforms. Welcome to the Facebook Live today, Scott. How are you going, buddy?
Very well, Ben. Lovely to be here, mate, and thanks for getting that whole mouthful out.
It was a bit of work, but I got there.
You did a sensational job.
Mate, I can't wait to dive deep. So let's dive straight in, because I think so many business owners struggle with growing their business, and some of them hit what I call a glass ceiling, right? They hit a ceiling and they can't seem to get past it. And I think there's a lot of unknown territory there for them, and they're not sure how to scale their business. So what was it that led you down the path of helping people with that?
Really from hitting that glass ceiling.
Yeah.
Smashing
it, go with that yourself.
Understanding what it is that caused that, and actually now going out and helping others. So in a prior life, we had sort of a software development, a bit of an email automation business, and we'd grown it to a certain size. And we just found that no matter how much revenue we had in the door, there was no cash in the tin at the end of the month. And you're just racking your brain going, how is it that we're growing revenue-wise, but we just can't seem to make any profit? And we, actually started doing a diagnosis of the business and looking at it, and realized that it was a black box, Ben. The business was running everything, we were creating a great customer experience, but we just couldn't figure out where the cash was going. It was a total black box, and that's when I realized that there was some pretty important things, being especially these 5 metrics, which we'll talk about today, that were completely missing from that business. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I reckon people will be able to relate to that. There's a lot of people I meet that have got cash flow. I know myself. I had a business that was, a fairly large transport company, and we weren't making any money. And it's and you know what? You go to a family barbecue and people say, "What do you do?" And you say, "I've got my own business," and they look at you and they go, "You must be rich." Not always the...
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a bit like it. Now, I can see a few more people have just joined us. Thank you so much for joining us here. I've got Scott Gilardi with me from Scale My Empire. A bit like me, Max My Profit, Scale My Empire.
You can scale whatever empire you like, Ben.
But Scott's answering the million-dollar question, I guess, which is, why do so many people struggle with scaling their business? We're going to talk about why flying blind in your business is really dangerous and what you can do about to fix that. Why technology platforms are critical to helping you scale your business. And Scott's got a lot of experience in that, having previously also owned a software development company. And he's going to tell us about the 5 key metrics that you should be measuring and why, and how they're going to help you scale your business. So let's get stuck straight into that. What do you think a lot of small businesses, the reason they're hitting that glass ceiling is because they're flying blind?
Yeah, I think it is. And, drawing from my own experience and from all the founders and operations owners that we talk to, you ask them about growth and where revenue is. You ask them about profit, and then you ask them, what it is that you think is driving that loss in profitability. And the answer is, we don't know. And it's because they just don't have those numbers to tell them what those kind of key levers and dials are that are in their business and what they're doing. And if you think of it like that, a business is a machine then. Leads come in the front, they get converted, some value gets delivered, and cash should come out at the end. And unless you're tracking the progress of that journey and measuring it, how could you possibly know where the money is falling out? If you think of it as a machine and there's either oil or there's water dripping out, that's kind of like your cash, right? And that's happening all the time. You can't figure out where unless you got the numbers.
Yeah, I love that analogy, because if it was a machine and oil was dripping out, you'd probably do something about it, wouldn't you?
Spot on.
Yeah. And I think there are so many businesses with oil dripping out and no one's actually doing anything about it. Yeah. So what do you find then are the key metrics? I mean, you talk about the 5 key metrics that matter. Can you run us through those?
Yeah. And I guess we came up with these specific 5 because it's so hard to know what to measure. I mean, most people are focused. You think about when you go into business, it's to deliver awesome value, or maybe you're great at sales or marketing. There aren't too many people that go into a business going, I'm really good at measuring and metrics and systems, right? It's usually coming in from more of a customer angle. So typically the last thing they're looking at is how to assess this stuff and knowing, should I be measuring, say, revenue coming in? And that's often one that people do look at. It's like, we're making lots of money. That's great. But that's a false statistic, because increased revenue doesn't mean more cash in the bank, as we sort of said.
Yeah.
So knowing which metrics actually matter, which metrics actually matter, say that 10 times fast, is the big problem. And that's why I came up with these sort of key 5 that are, particularly if you're in that professional services space, if you've got a team and you're delivering services, these are going to be really important, but they also apply to pretty much every small business out there as well. So everybody's going to get a lot of value from hearing these.
Great. All right, let's shoot. Key 5 metrics. I'm going to write them down.
You should, Ben, because these are...
A little known tidbit about Scott that you may not know is he's into kung fu fighting.
Yes, I was just challenging Ben to a duel, actually. Prior to us getting on, I'd slapped him with an electronic glove. And we were doing some warm-ups, and then and we'd booked flights for him to come down to the Octagon down here. But alas, we have this Facebook Live call, so it got in the way.
So we need to focus on the 5 key metrics. Now, if you did just join us, by the way, I am monitoring the chat box down below in the comments. If you've got a question for Scott, he's here right now live. So feel free to ask him any questions you've got as we go through and he tells us about the 5 metrics. More than happy to take any of your questions. I'll pass those on to Scott as we go. All right, let's dive into it. 5 key metrics.
First thing we're going to look at is actually marketing. So if you think of your business in terms of segments, marketing, sales, delivery, accounts, we're going to look at those sort of key areas and the main driving metric behind each of those areas. We're going to start with marketing. And a lot of people would think, I've got to look at how many leads are coming into the business and, how much new business is being generated from that. But that's actually not the most important metric, Ben. The most important metric for marketing is actually lead qualification rate. What is the quality of the leads coming into the business? Because I can go and do things like buy a list of 5,000 leads, or start hammering cold calls, or spend a bucket load of money on ads. But if my qualification rate is super low, like below sort of 15, 20%, I'm burning money, because I'm throwing heaps of effort on the sales team to work with deals which are never going to go ahead. I'm throwing heaps of money at marketing, which is generating leads that are never going to turn into a business. So you've got to get that sales qualification rate, the number of leads that come in, that you qualify as genuine sales, up above sort of at least above 15%, but more above 20 to 25. Make sense?
Yep, absolutely.
That's the first one. I'll pause quickly if there's any questions around that one before I move on to sales.
Yeah, just something that I'll add to that, Scott. One of the things that I measure is my acquisition cost and my lifetime value from each of those leads. And so that sort of helps indicate the quality. Because sometimes I think some people can find it difficult to quantify what is a qualified lead for them. Have you got any tips on that?
Yeah, definitely. And particularly for services business, you really want to work out what are your key criteria for a qualified lead, And I'll take my own example, do they have budget? Are they ready to make a decision? Am I talking to the decision maker? Do they have a need that I can solve? are they in a genuine, or recognize that they're in a genuine pain point? There might be a list of a dozen questions here that you can literally set up in your software platform, in your CRM, as tick boxes.
Mm-hmm.
And if they meet a certain number of criteria, they qualify to go into your sales pipeline. And that's what drives your qualification rate.
Yeah, good tips there. Great tips. So if you do have any questions, feel free to ask him, as I said before in the comments box before. All right. Metric number 2.
Moving on from marketing into sales, very similar concept, sales conversion rate. Again, a lot of people look at, well, how much money are we selling? Yeah, how much is the team member actually delivering? That's not what's truly important. The measure of the health of your sales system is conversion rate. Because again, if you're throwing a team of 50 salespeople and you're converting $1 million, that might sound like a lot of money, but if those team are converting at only 10%, there is either some poor marketing going on or a lot of lost deals and a lot of, a lot of water or a lot of oil seeping out of the machine that could be getting converted into raw cash at the other end. So conversion rate, the ratio of how many deals come in versus how many close, you got to get that up to at least 40%, 60% if you're really, really good and your system, you're really on point with your message and your product. Otherwise, your salespeople or your sales system is not performing. So you're taking your customers on the wrong journey. Making sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And when you talk about conversion rates, what do you think? Because you were talking before about a qualified lead. What about a conversion rate from, like, in the professional services? Quite often you'll have a sales meeting, and people give that different names. Mm-hmm. Could you look at a conversion from a booked appointment to a held appointment, from a held appointment then to a sale, from a sale to an upsell, or something? Like, is there multiple conversion rates in that metric, or you just want to measure the one?
Oh, look, for people that are not measuring anything at all, the most important is, when it gets won or lost and what's that total. But yeah, if you want to get really deep into it, you can start to see where, if you think of where the oil is leaking out, you can say it's either in sales or it's in this particular component of sales that we've got a leak. And exactly as you say, that's where you can really start to make adjustments.
All right, cool. So we're measuring the quality of our leads. We're measuring the conversion rate of our leads into sales. Metric number 3. And remember, if you've got any questions, put them in the comment box.
If metric 1 and 2 are all about generating revenue, metric 3 and 4 are about converting that revenue into profit. So the first one is project margin. And for people that aren't project-based, it might be like a product margin or something similar to that. But you would be surprised. It's in the order of about 30% of businesses don't actually measure whether their projects are even profitable. They're selling deals, they're delivering the service, and they're not looking at the end if that job was actually a profitable job. That sounds elementary, but most people, they're in the thick of it. They're fighting to, keep their head above water, and it just slips through the gaps. They don't actually monitor.
Why do you think that is?
Look, I think that there's 2 reasons. One, the first, as I said, I think there's a lot going on in business, and it tends to be the last thing you look at. But I think the second is that it needs people to be accountable for what they're doing, particularly for project management. It means you got to put in timesheets. You got to be logging expenses. You got to capture the data. And if you're not capturing the data, which you're relying on your team to do for you, you can't get a result at the end. Humans don't really love that, but we haven't got AIs doing for it yet. So humans want to be explorers. We want to be relators, creators. We don't necessarily want to be working on spreadsheets. It's a bit of a challenge, but we don't have an AI to do it for us yet, Ben. So you've got to get your team to put it in.
Yeah, I'm sure you're working on one.
It's only about 15 years away.
I won't hold my breath.
No, and I'm not going to give it to the keys to the nukes, which was in my first plan. I'm going to try and keep it away from military applications and just stick to time sheeting and capturing that.
Yeah, good man. So margins obviously highly important, and making sure that project by project you're making money. And I guess every business is going to have to be different in the way that they measure that, aren't they?
Yeah, and as I say, in a professional services setting, it's a project-based. In a trade setting, it might be called a job. It might be called a product for other businesses, and they're looking at what it costs to manufacture that product, what it costs to deliver that product. But either way, you've got to be capturing all of those little bits of information which contribute to the raw cost versus what you're selling it for, and the difference is margin. And if you don't mind, I'll slide into number 4 because it's very much related. And again, I'll put in the context of professional services first, and that's what we call utilization or billable utilization. So we've said, are our projects profitable, but is our team profitable? Again, if we've got projects that are 60, 80% margin, happy days, that's great. But if the team who are getting paid full-time wages are only spending 20% of their time on billable work and the other 80% sipping lattes and talking about, I don't know, The Bachelor or whatever, you're losing money. You're just bleeding cash, right? So you've got to be looking at team utilization. And same thing goes for manufacturing. If you're overstaffed, that's poor profit. I mean, what does a full-time team member cost on Australian wages in a typical services business, Ben? You know, like 100 grand, 80 grand. If you've got one full-time person across your team and not utilized, that's margin.
Yeah.
Net business profit, $80,000 out the window.
So if we go back to that machine view, if you bought a machine, let's say you're making, I don't know, widgets, and someone sold you a machine saying it's going to make 1,000 widgets a week and it only made 500 widgets a week, you'd probably do something about it, wouldn't you?
Exactly right. Exactly right. Exactly the context. So that one's really important. So qualification conversion will make sure you're making the best use of revenue, but margin and utilization are what actually generate profit.
All right, fantastic. So that makes sense. And I think and in professional services, that is about billable hours. We hear that terminology a lot for professional firms. But utilisation in manufacturing or something could be machinery or equipment that you own. Is that getting used at its full capacity? So there's lots of different things that you can think about. Now, what about number 5? What's the 5th metric? Let's bring it in for a landing.
Well, it ties everything together, and it's about team and team engagement, because ultimately, unless you are a completely robotic business that is really just churning out widgets in a totally automated fashion, you're relying on human beings to deliver your brand, your experience, and how happy they are and how engaged they are in your brand is going to define how much revenue you generate and how profitable that revenue is at the end. So I highly recommend, and it's the most least tracked in all of businesses, and it's mostly I spoke to Jim the other day. He was upset. Not sure things are going to go well with Jim, but then someone else is on a good wicket, and that's usually all it is. It's a conversation. There's no data behind it.
It's a difficult one to track, though, isn't it?
It used to be, but there are now technology platforms out there that have a range of different, from like sort of micro surveys to, there's a whole bunch of ways of doing it now, but there's technology platforms out there that will actually collect a little bit of data on this stuff and give you some trends. And for me, when I had an overseas team, in the Philippines, I had a team of 18 people there. When especially you're not face-to-face, getting that engagement data lets you solve problems before they happen. It means that maybe you think that someone who's going to quit doesn't quit, and that saves you a stack of money. It may help you move someone on before they cause major problems in the team, which can also cost you money.
Yeah, so true. So we've got, I can see quite a few more people joining us live. This is a live broadcast. I've got Scott Gilardi here from Scale My Empire, and we are here to help you grow your business and take it to the next level. If you've been struggling with your growth, then you're in for a real treat. If you've just joined us, you can always go back and watch the beginning a bit later, but make sure you hang on tight because we're on for a ride. We're about to find out a bit more about using technology to help us measure all of these things. Scott, by the way, if you do have any questions, feel free to ask them down below in the question box. I'm monitoring it here on my iPhone live. I'm not just searching Facebook myself while Scott is talking. I'm actually using it to monitor.
He's so thoroughly uninterested in what we're talking about. He's just like, great. So who's playing footy tonight?
I was actually looking up for some kung fu moves so I can beat you in that kung fu battle.
I'm ready. I'm getting the octagon booked. Right
I can see Grant has joined us. G'day, Grant. How you going, buddy? Good to see you joining us for another live. All right, so talk to us about Because I mean, your background is obviously in technology. You had the software development company, and you've been really good at finding the different platforms and helping people marry up what's best for them. Tell us a bit about, because I think, and I can say this from personal experience, it's overwhelming, right? There's so much out there. How does someone go about picking the right technology to help them scale their business?
Well, yeah, great question. This is what we're here to help people with Scale My Empire, is make the right technology decisions and get those things implemented. And if you think of what the main steps are to getting your 5 metrics, the first step is getting the right platforms. And across those metrics we talked about, the 3 main platforms there were a good CRM, a good sales CRM, which is going to do qualification conversion, a project management system, which is going to do margin and utilization, and then a team engagement platform, which will give you, no surprise, the team engagement metrics at the end. How you choose those products, like you said, it's a bit of a minefield, and that's where, depending on the type of business you are, there's a whole swag of different options, and that's something that we can help you make a decision on. But they all have free trials, and I would recommend you get out there, start up a few free trials, and when the sales team do reach out to you to actually help you talk through, don't ignore them. They're actually there to help you define. They're trying to do the same thing, qualify you and convert you, right? They're trying to actually help you make the right decision. So go in thinking about the metrics that you want to measure first, and then start some of those trials up and see if those platforms give them to you.
Yeah, okay. So sticking on the professional services slant, let's say I'm a small professional services firm looking to start tracking some of this stuff. Have you got anything that off the cuff you could say, here's a couple of good options?
Yeah, definitely. So if you're a professional services business and you're on Google G Suite, there probably isn't a CRM out there that's better than Copper CRM. It's a beautiful user experience. It's a tool that your team will actually want to use. It acts as a bit of a second brain and does a lot of data entry for you. You know how I said humans don't like putting in data?
Yeah.
Copper does a lot of that for you, and it's really specific to professional services on G Suite.
Copper, C-O-P-P.
C-O-P-P. Don't try to Google it because you'll just get commodity markets. Copper, or put in Copper CRM. Copper.com.
CRM, yep.
Copper.com. So very good. If you're not on G Suite, you're on Office 365, you've got a lot less limited. No, you've got a more limited option set because less things integrate. But I would recommend checking out something like Base CRM or Active Campaign. All sensational products for exactly that.
And these will help you with your email marketing as well as your sales management.
Yeah, or they'll integrate with email marketing tools that do that sort of thing. So that's on the CRM side. If you're, again, looking at professional services and it's project management, if you're a small business, sort of under 20 people, that kind of thing, there's some great products out there like forecast.it, which is a great little project management system that'll give you margin and utilization. Or if you're a little bit bigger and you need some more clout, mavenlink.com is best in breed project management for sort of mid-market services agencies. And then wrapping it up with team engagement, Peakon is my preferred platform, the one that we recommend the most. That's Peak, P-E-A-K-O-N, Peakon. Make sense?
Absolutely. So there's some good tips for you, everybody, and if we'll try and get the team to tap those into the chat box down below, or maybe Scott can jump on and do that later because I don't think you went.
Yeah, no worries. I'll put in a few links, and you're welcome to ask me any questions about those, and I can hook up trials and discussions about them.
Absolutely. So maybe, I don't know if you've got any links to trials that we can pop in the chat box down below a bit later on, but we'll do that if we can. And if you've got any questions for Scott whilst we're live, please ask them now because how long have we got left? We've got 6 minutes left of this Facebook Live where I'm going to be picking his brains. Now, I want to ask you a question that I ask a lot of people in the software world, and we've seen a transition in the last 10 years from where you'd buy a product on the shelf, it'd be a box, it was one-off fee, you'd install it and that'd be it. And that product would be a version, and then when they brought out a new version, you went and you either paid an upgrade fee or you bought it again, to where we now got this monthly subscription. A lot of business owners are really... I guess, troubled by the fact they've got to make this monthly payment all the time. What's the argument for that as versus against that? What's your thoughts on that?
Look, pretty clear. It used to be that you might pay $100,000 for a piece of software, and as you said, you'd have to pay for upgrades and so forth, and you'd probably have to pay for yearly maintenance. Now, for what used to cost $100,000, for $100 a month, you can get literally enterprise grade software that was just simply unavailable to small businesses 10 years ago. I mean, even when I first started my business, a lot of the things that are out there, and that was only 5 or 6 years ago, the kind of things just weren't available. And it has never been a better time to be a small business. If you think $1,000 a month is a lot of money to spend on IT, think of what that gives you in order to do business in 2019. If you were to, I mean, it's like the tool. I'm trying to think of the right analogy. It's literally buying the tools that run your business. So if you were going to be a mechanic and you weren't going to invest $1,000 in tools, or if you wanted to be a construction company and you were going to under-invest in the tools to build homes, what's going to happen? Those places are going to fall down. You're not going to have the capability that you need to work efficiently. And your competitors who have invested, they will.
They're going to build stronger buildings.
Stronger buildings.
It was interesting because I mentioned to you before we started the live, I was, so Scott's actually been on my Business Brain Food podcast, and I had Jim Penman on there, so who's the founder of Jim's Mowing and all the Jim's group. And one of the questions I asked him about, Scott, which will be music to your ears, I said, what do you do to avoid making mistakes, and then, what is your damage control? How do you go about making sure you don't have issues around customer service and looking after your team? And he said, we invest $2 million a year in technology now. And we do that because the technology is what tells us when there's a problem. It also mitigates problem, and it makes us more efficient. So it avoids us having problems as well. So, he was a real big fan of investing. Now he's got a bigger budget than most of us.
Yeah.
But it was interesting. As a percentage of his revenue, that'd be about 1%, maybe just under.
Yeah.
But it gives people a bit of a perspective. What percentage of your revenue are you spending on technology to mitigate issues happening in your business? Because I think it's a great tip from an entrepreneur.
We recommend 3 to 4% actually.
Yeah.
So, and it is because exactly like you said, if you're flying blind without it, you can live on spreadsheets if you want, but what's that going to do?
Isn't it? It's very clunky.
Yeah.
It's very clunky. So maybe to finish up, because we've got a couple of minutes left, if no one's got any questions, feel free to ask your questions now. But could you give us some immediate action steps somebody can do if they're in a small business and they're not measuring anything? Because it can be overwhelming. Do they go and find the technology first? Do they decide on what they're going to measure first? Do they ring you? What do they do?
Well, I would always recommend ring me first, Ben, but failing that, you're going to work out what you want to measure, and hopefully this little live has given you a place to start, but there might be more things that you want to add. It's going to depend on the sort of business. If you have nothing in place now, you are going to break out a spreadsheet, and you are going to just manually build a habit to manually capture that data week on week or month on month to get you started, right? That is the number one thing that you can do without any investment other than a bit of your own time. The second is then you're going to go and look for the right platforms. And because you've done the first bit, choosing those platforms is going to be a whole lot easier, because you're going to be able to ask the sales guy, can it do this? Can it do that? Can it report on this? And they're going to be able to tell you. And you're going to be able to make a really easy decision and cut through the maze of platforms pretty quickly. The third thing you're going to do is build a habit for you and the team to capture the data. And this is the last and the most important thing. Like, you've done all the great stuff, you've got your platforms in, they are digital paperweights if people aren't capturing the data for you. Got to build habits.
I like that, digital paperweights.
Yeah.
That's going to be the quote of the day from Scott is, if you're not, if your people aren't using the tools, they're just digital paperweights.
They're just digital paperweights.
They're just digital paperweights. All right, mate. Well, I can't thank you enough. How can people find out more if they want to get in touch with you, buddy?
They can email me directly, go@scalemyempire.com. That is the easiest way. Just send me a personalized message telling me that you got in touch via the podcast to let me know, and we'll line up a discussion.
Perfect. Well, thanks so much again, mate, for joining us today. Looks like we've got no questions at this stage. Feel free, if you're watching a replay of this and you've got a question, still put it down below. We'll monitor the chat box anyway, and we'll get Scott to come in and personally answer those questions with his fingers, and that way we can get you the answers that you need. And of course, you can always email Scott directly to get some more help, and I'm sure he'd be more than happy to help you work out the best things to measure in your business and the way to go about measuring them. And I think, what you've hit the nail on the head there, mate, is that it can be overwhelming, but if you have the right tools in place, what used to be difficult can be much easier now. And it's just about picking the right tools, and I think it's been super, super helpful. So thank you for that. We still got him there. Looks, is he frozen? What's going on?
I'm still here. There was actually just a power outage.
Oh, really?
Like the lights just went out. It just like, the fact that we're still connected is incredible. I don't know how that even happened.
We're probably surviving off of the lightning strike or whatever is going on down there in Frankston in Victoria. I was just saying thanks again, mate, for joining us. I'm really grateful for you to give up your time today. And if people want to contact you, we'll make sure your email is down below in the chat box. But once again, thanks for contributing to the live here.
Thanks, Ben. Really
all right, buddy.
It, mate. Cheers.
Good luck with that kung fu fighting, eh?